With the launch of Black Ops 6 Zombies, it finally feels that Call of Duty Zombies has a new life to it, something that hasn't really felt that way in so long, because for so long, Zombies felt like it was in this downward spiral. Everything kept getting worse and worse. There was never really any peaks again, which was so unfortunate, and many people just started losing hope in the Call of Duty Zombies game mode. But that all changed with the launch of Black Ops 6. Now, finally you see people again excited for not only what we're currently playing, which there is a lot of that, but also the future of zombies, which is something that has just been so rare recently. And that's what I want to look into. How did we get into that downward spiral, and then how are we finally now getting out of it? And in other words, this is a short story in Call of Duty Zombies. Now, to really understand the downward spiral, we have to first understand where it was spiraling from. Because before everything got bad, things were amazing. In fact, they were at the peak of Call of Duty Zombies ever. And this was in Black Ops 3. And I mean, what's there not to say about the game? I mean, just think about a couple of the maps. You have Shadows of Evil, Drake, and Goral Krovi, three of the greatest maps to ever be created. Not to mention the insane hype that came with Zombies Chronicles, remastering 7 previous maps that included Origins, another great map. Like, think of that slate of maps that you have there. You have 4 of the all-time greatest maps on one game, and 3 of them were unique to that game. And there's still the solid maps that were there too, whether it be Moon that was remastered, Shangri-La, Ascension, Zetsubo no Shima, or whatever you could say. There's still just so much variety in that game to play. And anyone who was around during that time, especially on YouTube, you would know the excitement that existed every single time we got anything for that game. And it's just something that was just such a special time in the history of Call of Duty Zombies. And by the end of its season, it felt like things would always stay that great. But then we got Black Ops 4. Ashes cleanse the ordinary. Now, to be fair to the game, the pre-launch was actually super hype. I don't think there's been more hype for a Call of Duty Zombies game than there was for Black Ops 4 pre-launch. I mean, on face value, it sounds amazing. We were going to get 4 launch Zombies maps. One of those being a remake of Mob of the Dead, the greatest Zombies map to ever be made, of course, with Blood of the Dead. And we are also going to have Classified, which was a remake of 5, which is whatever. But then things started getting a bit strange because the other 2 maps were not anything to do with the old story, and in fact, it was the start of a brand new story. This, of course, being the Chaos story. And what Treyarch explained to us is that they're going to be telling these 2 stories alongside each other. They're going to be wrapping up Ether, and alongside that, they're going to be starting up Chaos. And right away when I heard this, I didn't like the idea of that. I thought Chaos was going to be doomed from the start because no matter how good it was never ever going to be able to outshine anything that was happening in Ether at the time. I mean, that was supposed to be the finale of the Ether storyline, something that all of us love so much. And you expect us to pay attention to anything else? Like, that just didn't make any sense. And it didn't help that the maps for that story were also all out of whack, because something that is not well known is that Dead of the Night DLC 1 was originally supposed to be a launch map, but because of the celebrity crew and having conflicting schedules, they weren't actually able to release it at launch. So instead it became DLC 1. And what was originally supposed to be DLC 1, that being 9, became a launch map. And that makes perfect sense in hindsight, because why in the hell would they release Dead of the Night, a prequel to both Voyage of Despair and 9, after Voyage of Despair 9 with DLC 1? Like, it just didn't make any sense. And already, the Chaos story was just not being told in the most optimized way. But what this really is showing us is a very chaotic development for this game. And it wasn't just with Dead of the Night. The whole game was, because originally it was going to have a campaign, but was scrapped, and it was scrapped only 10 months before the game came out. So Treyarch had to rush and try to figure out what they were going to do to replace a campaign that they no longer have in the game. And this of course led to both Blackout and also the most Zombies maps on launch ever. And they added 2 more, which of course ended up being Voyage of Despair and 9. And as you guys can imagine, when you have chaotic development, something's bound to go wrong. And sure enough, by the launch of this game, the game was completely broken. Everyone who was playing was experiencing the game crashing, whether you're going especially for high rounds, the Easter egg, or even just playing normally. It was just crashing and crashing and crashing. The game was broken. And people would argue that the game was just dead on arrival because of this. But on top of that, like, they even made some bad gameplay decisions. The new perk system was just atrocious in my opinion, especially removing iconic perks like Double Tap, Speedicola, and Juggernog. Like, just what were you thinking, Treyarch? And there's a lot of other smaller issues I could bring up, but I think this does a good enough explanation for why Black Ops 4 just was doomed from the start. And more importantly, was the start of this downward spiral. But there was no rest for Treyarch. Even though they just went through that chaotic development of Black Ops 4, they had to drop everything they were doing and had to start developing Black Ops Cold War. Now, if Black Ops 4's development was chaotic, Cold War's was rushed. Treyarch just released COD 2018, which was Black Ops 4, and now they were in charge of Call of Duty 2020. And they were told a little bit late. They only had like a year and 4 months to develop this game. And of course, this was reflected in the Zombies game mode. Because of this rushed development, the maps that we saw both at launch and throughout the seasons were just not on the same quality that we've seen in the past. The maps were basic, reused for multiplayer or campaign, and were lacking in music, side Easter eggs, and most importantly, a playable crew. And that especially was probably the worst thing that could have happened to Cold War. Because keep in mind, the Ether storyline was wrapped up at the end of Black Ops 4, so this was the start of the new Dark Ether story, and they wanted to get people invested in this from the start, but that was going to be an extremely difficult task when you didn't have a playable crew. The main way that they have told the story in the past was through a playable crew, and now they didn't even have that in this game. And this of course hurt the launch of this Dark Ether story, and this all had to do with the rushed development of this game. I think almost every single major issue with Cold War is boiled down to its rushed development. Don't get me wrong, there is some bad just decisions when it comes to gameplay that you can see here and there, but by far it's just between the maps being bland, not having music, and the story being lacking could mainly all be explained by its rushed development. And even though I am a defender of Cold War, I could tell you it is no Black Ops 3 or even Black Ops 2. Now, even though Cold War kind of evened everything out, I wouldn't say things got worse under Cold War, but they didn't really get better. But the next game would definitely change that, and change it for the worse. Because next, we were getting Vanguard Zombies. And Vanguard, this has to be the lowest point for Call of Duty Zombies ever, and I don't really think it's arguable. Like, you look to any other game, it's not close. Vanguard is the lowest point. And I mean, just look at the launch map, or if you could call it a map. It was Fang. It was reused for multiplayer and campaign, all its locations, and it was objective based. It wasn't even round based. But it was made worse because now we had the continued operator system, but on top of that, there wasn't even a single side Easter egg on the map at launch. Hell, there wasn't even a main Easter egg at launch, which was insane. And to really show you guys how lacking Fang was at launch, it didn't even have a Pack-a-Punch camo. Honestly, it just felt like with how poor Vanguard Zombies launch, it felt like that was a suable thing that could have happened. Like, someone should have been able to sue what Call of Duty was putting out. And I mean, throughout the season, it didn't get much better. You had Terra Maldicta, which was, another objective-based map, and then they made a turn to make it into round-based. And then we probably have the peak of Vanguard Zombies, which is Shinonuma Reborn, which was a fine map, but I mean, Shinonuma Reborn is a remake of Shinonuma, a map from 2009. And if your peak for your game is just a remake of a 2009 map, I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know. And then, of course, it was wrapped up with the Archon, which was literally just Terra Maldicta, except green. I don't even know what else to say about that one, honestly. Now, there's no good transition after talking about Vanguard Zombies, so Modern Warfare Zombies.
Forget what you know. Monster. monsters are real.
Well, this was the first ever time that we got zombies in the Modern Warfare universe. Now, what was interesting about this is that this wasn't round-based, nor was it objective-based. Instead, this was kind of like DMZ Zombies, right? It was an extraction-based game mode, except the main enemies weren't other players or just bots. Instead, they were zombies, and you had objectives and things to do like that. And I will admit that actually at launch, I was pretty excited for this idea, and I think it actually met my expectations. And even with Season 1, it seemed to get better, especially when we had the worm boss fights. Like, that was pretty cool. But then everything after that was just not good. Like, I think the only good thing that ever happened after that for any updates for that game was probably the final boss that we got ever, which was cool and stuff, but like, you know, maybe this wasn't the direction zombies should have gone in. Like, when people talk about the war zonification of zombies, this is that for sure, and I don't think it was done that well. And really, for me, Modern Warfare Zombies just becomes super forgettable. But then that brings us to today, because now we have Black Ops 6 Zombies. And as amazing as we all know Black Ops 6 is now, there were some doubts before the game came out. Especially after Call of Duty Next, people were just writing Black Ops 6 off as just another modern zombies game that just isn't zombies anymore, or stuff like that. But after launch, I think a lot of people have changed their mind. And I mean, can you blame them? I mean, Terminus is an amazing map. Like, that map is already a top 10 map in my opinion. I love the setting of it. I love the vibes of it, the breakout and all that. Not to mention the Cthulhu boss fight that we have at the end. Like, that's amazing. Like, there's no way to argue that. And even Liberty Falls, a map that many people thought was just a multiplayer map or something like that. It turns out that more people are actually watching that on YouTube than Terminus, which is insane to me because I think Terminus definitely deserves more attention, but I'm glad people are enjoying Liberty Falls too. But just think about everything you could do in this game. Like, I'm not even done with all this stuff. Like, you could just play the game casually, you know, that's completely fine. But on top of that, you could also go for the Easter eggs on both maps, which, by the way, Liberty Falls is the second launch map to ever have a main Easter egg on, so that's already amazing. You could go high rounds like many people have already done. You could just be grinding out levels for your augments, which is a new system that's amazing, the return of gobblegums, or even do the camos, be working on that, going for dark ops challenges, doing directed mode, or just so many different things to do in this game. Like, there really is so many things to play for in this game that it's already like been out for a while now, and I still feel like I haven't experienced everything in the game. Like, I haven't got to round 100 on Terminus yet. Like, there's still so much to do with the game. And not to mention, we already got our first look at DLC 1, a map coming in mid-December called Citadel de Mor, a map that looks so exciting that this is the point where I knew I had to make this video. Because from the one image we saw of this map, I knew Black Ops 6 brought zombies back. Because we see this picture and DLC 1 is going to be in a medieval castle. And I mean, if that doesn't scream the peak of Call of Duty Zombies, I don't know what does. Because the previous peak all started with Dreisendrache, another medieval castle map. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be on that level, we still have much to see, but just based off the location alone gets me so excited for what we're going to be getting through not only the launch of Black Ops 6, but the season of Black Ops 6 going forward. Now, time will only tell if Black Ops 6 will get better with time or worse with time, but my expectations are through the roof right now. And regardless of what happens, I strongly feel that Call of Duty Zombies is back.